The game launched, and a hint informed that there were only 4 male characters that the heroine could conquer and get endings. First, the first meeting was loaded, which took place at a ball in the palace. Cedric approached Yuri and asked how she was feeling. Only at that moment, when the game announced that the girl had become the main character of this story, did she wake up. Yuri tried to look around and understand why it was so bright and why all her clothes were so strange. The girl remembered that she had just been lying on the bed and playing a game. She looked at the young man in front of her and realized that he seemed somehow familiar to her. Yuri remembered that just a moment ago, a tutorial prompt had popped up, which said that if she danced with Cedric, his favor level would increase. The girl realized that this dialogue box was similar to a hint from the game she was playing. She was horrified when she realized that she was inside this very game. Now she remembered that the character in front of her was Cedric, one of the main characters of the game. The girl didn't know how this happened, but she should at least answer. So she apologized to the young man and, citing sudden weakness, asked him to postpone their dance. The guy offered to accompany her to the restroom, but Yuri refused. The girl headed towards the exit on her own, and the young man remained looking after her. As Yuri ran down the hallway, the system reported that she had not danced with Cedric and had failed to raise the character's favorability level. The girl understood that she had no choice but to leave the guy, because increasing favor meant winning the male character. But in this game, no matter who the main character chooses, she ends up dying when the final boss destroys the Empire. The girl did not understand how she managed to get into this particular game when there were so many of them in the world. She was irritated that no matter who she tried to conquer, she always ended up dying in the end. She, Lee Yuri, who was just living peacefully in modern Korea, finally got a small apartment in the housing lottery, but now her life was in danger due to being transferred to the game. While the girl was thinking about her own things, a woman approached her from behind, worried about her condition. Aunt Elsa did not understand what was happening to the girl and why she ran away. She had just seen Yuri refuse to dance with Marquis Cedric. She didn't understand if the girl was really going to spend the rest of her life alone. Her words made the heroine remember that this world has a bad ending, in which the main character doesn't get along with any of the male characters and moves to another country. The scenario for this ending was called Solo because the girl was left alone. However, the heroine realized that this was her only chance to survive, so she firmly decided that she would follow the solo ending and then everything would be fine for her. If she moves to another country, she can survive because she won't get into a civil war. But she forgot the conditions. For solo, it was necessary for the favor level of all the main characters to be equally high, but not reach romantic, and the characteristics to be above a certain level. Considering she had to maintain the goodwill of all the major male characters, achieving the solo ending was the hardest. However, there was nothing to be done, because this was the only chance for salvation and the possibility of returning home. Therefore, the heroine firmly decided that she would do everything to return home. From that moment on, her game began, where the goal was to get to the solo ending without dying. The girl once again carefully studied the conditions for achieving the desired result. She knew that first she needed to develop talent in order to receive items for abilities, and for this, she needed to meet the main male characters. The mechanics of the game were that she had to go through certain episodes with male characters in order for her talent to be revealed and her abilities to grow. And among all categories, talent and mana will naturally manifest themselves after a quick meeting at a picnic with the master of the magic tower. The girl stood near the window and tried to come up with a plan on how to get through this episode as quickly as possible. She was brought out of her reverie by a maid who had just entered and announced that it was time for lunch. Yuri realized that the time had come because she was supposed to meet one of the male characters, her younger brother, for lunch. The girl understood that another episode was about to begin, so she prepared for the meeting. She was the last one to enter the dining room because the rest of the family was already sitting down to eat. Everything around was spectacular, and it didn't feel like that during the game. But the Duke's entire family was really different. Yuri realized that the man sitting at the head of the table was the main character's father, the Duke. Next to him, greeting the girl kindly, sat her stepmother, the Duchess. On the opposite side sat a young man, Calix, who was the heroine's brother. But the branch with his character starts with tense relations. Many people didn't like Calix, so they didn't even try to improve relations with him. Next to the girl sat Elena, the heroine's sister, who was worried about her well-being. The stepsister was an opponent in the game, and if Yuri couldn't defeat her in the skills competition, he would receive a penalty. The girl realized who was who, and then began to eat. She tried to discreetly look at those present, and realized that none of them were particularly polite towards her. Despite being father and daughter, the relationship between the Duke and Yuri is not very good. Yuri's mother, the former Duchess, died, and just 6 months later, the Duke remarried, which greatly hurt the girl. However, the current Duchess and Duke viewed this relationship as a formality, but Yuri did not know that her father still missed his deceased wife. To the girl's great relief, all this was known, so it was much easier for her in this world. Elena noticed that her sister barely touched her food, so she decided that she was not hungry. The brother immediately made a caustic conclusion that the girl had no appetite due to their presence. Mother immediately reprimanded him because the guy was quite harsh in his judgments. She noticed that Yuri hadn't really eaten anything, so she suggested asking the kitchen to cook something else. The girl tried to calm everyone down and say that she was just lost in thought, but she didn't have time. The mother added that the girl had always had certain food preferences, so the kitchen would be understanding. Yuri could barely catch what was happening around her, thinking that her mother was hinting that she was picky. The girl quickly pulled herself together and explained that it was all because of yesterday's weakness, but today she had no epithet at all. Yuri realized that it was better to finish for now, so she politely said goodbye and left first. The heroine realized that she needed to meet the master of the magic tower at tomorrow's picnic, much more than she initially thought. However, she was soon very surprised to learn that she had not received any invitation to the picnic. She was a little disappointed, because this was an event that she could watch in the game by simply pressing the skip button. The girl learned from the maid that her mother was in charge of all invitations to the estate. This meant that no invitations had been passed on to her yet, but they could be somewhere in the house. Yuri immediately wondered why her stepmother hadn't given her the invitation if the picnic was supposed to take place tomorrow. If she can't write to him, then developing her abilities may be complicated since she won't be connected to the Tower Master. In the solo ending, Yuri was invited to become a professor at a prestigious magic academy in another country, and with the wealthy immigration, she was able to avoid a civil war. In other words, the girl must develop her mathematical abilities to such an extent that she becomes worthy of the position of professor at a magic academy. She couldn't afford to fail in this episode, so she had to come up with something quickly. Yuri pulled herself together and told the maid that she needed to meet her stepmother right away. After this, a mini-quest began, where the heroine must enter into an argument with her stepmother, and as a reward, she will receive an invitation to a picnic. That is why the girl went to the summer garden, and her mother reminded her that just recently, she said that she was not feeling well. The woman was worried whether the girl should dedicate herself to this event in such a state. However, she noted that if the refusal came after so much time, the inviter would be very upset, so she suggested passing the invitation on to Elena. Yuri tried to keep a calm face, but in her heart, she didn't understand where this nonsense came from in her stepmother's head. The woman continued to insist on giving the invitation to her daughter Elena. Yuri realized that she needed to come up with something urgently, otherwise she wouldn't get the invitation. The stepmother believed that if Yuri allowed Elena to go instead of him, the hostess of the evening, the Marchioness, would be understanding. Elena has hardly been able to take part in social life due to her poor health, so this picnic could be a great chance for her. Only after these words did Yuri understand why her mother started this conversation. The Marquise ran the most prestigious salon in the entire empire, and the stepmother wanted to introduce her daughter to her. This would be an excellent opportunity for her to gain a foothold in high society. But the girl herself also needed an invitation, because she had to meet the main character. Yuri understood that for her, this was a matter of life and death, and she could not miss such a chance. She admitted that she knows her body better. It was a minor ailment that would not prevent her from attending the event. She promised to handle it, because mother shouldn't worry, and if Elena really wanted to go, she could personally explain everything to the Marquise. Yuri fell silent and waited for the woman's reaction, hoping that it was enough for her to back off. The stepmother agreed and noted that she could not do anything if the girl wanted it. She also asked not to bother about Elena, because she will still have opportunities to show herself in the future. Yuri accepted this decision with gratitude and was glad that her experience of communication at work had finally borne fruit. Now the key event was about to happen, so the girl went to get ready. After this, the small event was completed, and the heroine received as a reward an invitation to the marquise's picnic. After the gathering was over, the maid wished her mistress to be careful on the way and to enjoy the picnic. Yuri prepared well for the meeting with the main character, after which the second episode of the game began. The first thing the girl did was greet Bianca, who was eagerly awaiting the arrival of the guests. Lady Bianca was from the family of the Count. In the game, she was a secondary character. Together, they shared joys and sorrows. Yuri was glad that in person, her friendly energy was even more captivating. The first thing the girls did was saddle their horses and go for a ride in such beautiful weather. There was still a little left, and they had to reach the valley where the flowers had already blossomed. Yuri understood perfectly well that this walk would not go so easily. Bianca realized that they were quite far from the picnic site. She hoped that nothing would happen. However, the heroine knew perfectly well that it was at this moment that they were supposed to encounter a wild boar. It happened soon, but the animal scared the girl more than she imagined. Due to the lack of surprise, Yuri quickly got her bearings and suggested that they rush in different directions. As Bianca quickly turned and ran back, the heroine ran forward. It was easy in the game, but in reality, it was incredibly scary when you were being chased by a wild animal. The girl continued to jump forward with all her might and did not understand where the main character was. As soon as she got out into the open area, she immediately saw the stubborn tower master, Alex, who was hovering in the air. The girl immediately turned her horse towards him and raced as fast as she could, begging for help. So far, everything was going according to plan, so she let go of the reins and hoped Alex wouldn't stand by and watch her die. The girl's suspicions were confirmed when the young man picked her up in his arms and lifted her high into the air. Yuri was glad that her plan worked, and she successfully completed the quest. However, the girl did not calculate that the magician would be furious about what happened and might do something unexpected. The next second, Alex summoned a pillar of fire and directed it in the direction the boar ran. Yuri was very surprised, because she always thought of the fireball as a very ordinary spell, but now she was amazed by its power. Every main character used it, so she didn't think it was that impressive, but it was actually pretty cool. Yuri was glad that such a strong young man would be on her side. The young people carefully landed on the ground, and Yuri thought that seeing magic in real life was truly amazing. She was about to thank the young man for saving her, but she didn't have time to do so. A bright blue light shone right under their feet, which Alex was extremely unhappy about. The system reported that a rift had opened, after which the guys seemed to fall through the ground. When Yuri came to her senses, she saw that she was in the middle of an unfamiliar place. Alex took a deep breath and explained that they were in a space-time rift. Everything around was shining as if they were underwater. The rift was even more beautiful than in the pictures in the game. Yuri was mesmerized by this beauty, which surprised Alex. The young man asked whether the girl was an unawakened magician. Yuri explained that she had taken a test for magical aptitude immediately after birth. After this, Alex only sighed deeply and admitted that now everything was clear to him. The girl's magical potential was unleashed by his spell, and as a result, a space-time rift was created in which they were stuck. Yuri was mentally happy because she had met the Tower Master as planned and had successfully awakened her magic. Alex was unhappy that having interfered with his investigation, the stranger still behaved quite calmly. Yuri realized that it was time to win the favor of the main male character. She didn't know what type of conversation he would prefer, so she decided to go for something simpler. The girl guessed that the master of the magic tower would prefer someone who would not back down so easily, so she put on a good-natured face and said it was an incredible coincidence. She still apologized for interfering with his research, which was supposed to be very important. Yuri knew that these space-time rifts were randomly appearing throughout the Empire, and they were related to monster sightings. The girl actually felt guilty for messing everything up in order to awaken her magic. At the end, she smiled tenderly and sincerely thanked the young man for saving her. The heroine was eagerly awaiting how her fiery speech would affect the main character. The great Tower Master noticed that even at the moment when he let his guard down, he thought that the woman in front of him was quite problematic. The system reported that the young man was interested in the girl, which made her happy. Alex suggested ending this confusing conversation and getting out into the ordinary world. He began to cast spells, adding at the end that the stranger really knew what to say. Yuri was delighted by what was happening because her whole body began to sparkle. And the next second, just blinking, the girl found herself again in the middle of the forest. She started looking around and kept saying that Alex's magic was simply incredible. Although the guy said that her praise would not change anything, the girl clearly heard the signal of increased favor and the guy's embarrassed face. So she continued to thank him and was glad that the tactic was working. The system reported that, thanks to Alex's influence, her latent talents of mana and intelligence had awakened. In addition, for completing the quest, the girl received the title of Young Magician and a small amount of mana, which slightly increased her closeness with other magicians. Yuri was happy that she successfully completed the events and even revealed her true name. Alex suddenly touched the girl and realized that everything had not gone as smoothly as he had hoped. When the guy opened the rift earlier, his and the girl's mana circle became connected, and she was still a newly awakened one, so he should have been more careful. Yuri felt like this wasn't in the game's script, so she didn't know what it meant. Alex explained that in order to separate their circles, she would need to learn magic and help him while their circles remained inseparable. The system reported that the favor had reached certain conditions, so Yuri decided that this was a hidden episode. Alex had no choice but to promise to teach the girl magic himself. Yuri was very surprised by his words, and then saw the system notification about entering a hidden episode. The guy had no desire whatsoever to ruin the life of a budding young magician, which impressed the girl, as he turned out to be much more responsible than she expected. If Yuri becomes a student, Alex's favor will grow quickly. She needs to win his favor, but if she progresses faster than the other characters, she might accidentally end up with the Master of the Magic Tower ending. The girl's face reflected doubt, and Alex was worried that it bothered her so much. Yuri knew that the stats related to magic, mana, and intelligence were extremely important to becoming a magic professor at the academy. Moreover, the Master of the Mathematical Tower, Alex is such an important figure in the Empire that there is no one who does not know him when it comes to magic. Eventually, the girl must learn about magic from him, so she can raise the stats associated with it enough to achieve the desired ending. So Yuri resigned herself to the outcome and announced that she would become the Master's apprentice. However, they both decided that this would only be a temporary measure. Immediately after this, the system granted the girl the title of Temporary Disciple of the Master of the Romantic Tower, and her mana and intelligence increased. Alex was surprised, because usually a person reacted differently to becoming his student. However, he even liked the fact that the girl was so unusual. She surprised him. Only after this moment did Yuri officially introduce herself to the young man, because before that, there was simply no time. The guys added a bit of formality to the moment, and Alex also introduced himself, because he didn't know that the girl knew everything about him from the game. They shook hands to signify the beginning of their collaboration, and after this event, the picnic from the game episode was successfully completed. The event organizer was shocked by the news of the wild boar's appearance, but Yuri returned safe and sound and reported help from the Master of the Romantic Tower. The Marquise regretted it so much that the girl decided not to be indignant and insisted on her safety. So she voluntarily went for it, and the owner of the best salon, the Empire, ended up in her debt. In the evening, the girl rested from a long day because she had to run from a wild boar, and she also became an apprentice to the Master of the Romantic Tower. Yuri wanted to test the relationship because she was interested in what people thought of her. She expected Alex to be thinking about starting a new problematic temporary relationship, which was a good start. However, she was surprised, because in the game, the girl could not know her father's true feelings, but here they were demonstrated. The butler appeared and brought flowers sent by the Honorable Marquis. Yuri didn't understand why Cedric, the first major male character she encountered, did this. Enclosed in the flowers was a note in which the young man wished her a speedy recovery. The butler and the maid were inspired. They hoped that a romantic story was unfolding right before their eyes. However, Yuri disappointed them by reminding them that the Marquis would remember that she had not felt well on the first day of the meeting. The girl knew that if she didn't dance with Cedric at their first meeting, she would receive a bouquet later. However, the level of favorability was bound to drop due to the refusal. While Yuri was admiring the beautiful bouquet, her brother walked past her. The young man asked the girl where she got these flowers. He noticed that she wasn't very upset about receiving it as a gift. Yuri didn't understand why she should be upset at all when she received a bouquet as a gift. These words struck the young man right in the heart. He froze with his eyes wide open. Then he noticed with irritation that when he did the same, the girl behaved differently. Yuri didn't quite understand what he was talking about, But the guy had no intention of continuing this conversation. He noted that it was nonsense and not the most original story worth remembering. The young man left silently, and Yuri realized that he, too, had not had the most pleasant day. Already in bed, checking her brother's status, the girl realized that he didn't want to mention anyone. Yuri immediately guessed that Calix behaved this way because of his stepmother's intrigues. The young man tried to interact with her as little as possible and avoided the girl. This upset her because one day, as his father's heir, Calix was supposed to become the next duke. Therefore, Yuri needed to get closer to him so that in the future, the Rozan family would stand behind her. Calix was not going to make the first move, so the girl had to take the initiative into her own hands and sort out the misunderstandings created by her stepmother. However, Yuri took into account that meeting with her stepmother, the hidden episode with the master of the magic tower, as well as how the duke's status window changed and the appearance of the bouquet. It immediately became obvious that this world was different from the game she knew. However, the girl was sure that she should not take this for granted. Yuri came to her father and hoped that she was not distracting him from his rest. The man invited the girl to sit down and asked her why she was looking for him. Yuri realized how strained the relationship was between them, since the man was talking to her like that. She shook the bell and called the maid, who brought the tea that the girl had prepared. The man was surprised that his daughter approached this meeting so responsibly. Yuri knew that his mother's favorite tea would awaken feelings of nostalgia in him, because her father should not be neglected. She had little information about him and needed to somehow make a good impression. The Duke realized that since the girl had prepared tea, the topic of conversation was quite complex. However, Yuri denied everything, saying that she simply thought that she had not spoken to her father for a long time, which is why she did it. The man was not convinced by her words and still believed that the girl needed something. Yuri realized that it wouldn't be so easy to fool him and that this wasn't enough. She said that she had recently attended a picnic organized by the Marquise, where she encountered a wild boar. The Duke realized that the Marquise was taking terrible care of the hunting grounds, and they got off this incident with the usual apologies. Yuri realized that her father did not like her way of solving problems, but the girl added that something even more important happened that day. Yuri admitted that during this incident, she awakened as a mage. It was information, because it was confirmed by the master of the mathematical tower who saved her. The Duke thought that the family's magical line would be broken, but the girl awakened. He remembered that her mother also had the makings of a magician, although this could not be fully determined, since the woman never woke up before her death. Yuri was surprised by this information, because it was not in the game, but she had to take advantage of the chance. So the girl asked how old her parents were when they met. The man was lost in his memories and noticed that he was about Yuri's age at that moment. The girl was glad that the atmosphere had become more relaxed and wanted to continue talking about her mother. However, the Duke suddenly noticed that it was time for her to think about marriage herself. Yuri was afraid that her father preferred to send his daughter to another family rather than establish a relationship with her, so she admitted that she had never thought about it. And besides, very little time had passed since her debut. The girl had no idea what was going on in the Duke's head, but she was pleased to learn that she had a talent similar to her mother's. The Duke knew that the magic tower was not connected to any country, and the tower's master nominally possessed the body of a knight, but showed no hidden loyalty to anyone. Now there was nothing to be done about the fact that the girl became a student of such a man. He only asked the girl to remember that magicians are not allowed to reveal their true name to anyone. It could become their fatal weakness, because the girl is now a mage, so they can't let the tower master recognize him. Yuri listened carefully to the advice and promised that she would take it into account. It was difficult to communicate with the Duke. He abruptly raised the topic of marriage, but since they had also talked about her mother, Yuri considered the conversation at least a little fruitful. However, after finishing the conversation with the Duke, the girl still had some planned things to do. Calix didn't understand why Yuri decided to drink tea in his reception room, since the weather was so nice outside. The young man was irritated that his sister came to him and interfered with his work. The girl had a reason, because the system gave her a quest that would be completed successfully if the heroine stayed in her brother's waiting room for more than 10 minutes. Yuri admitted that she just wanted to see her brother, but in reality, she was waiting for the timer to start counting down. The girl pointed to the sofa opposite her and invited the young man to have a cup of tea with her. Although the young man was indignant, he still sat down in the offered seat, after which the timer immediately started and the countdown began. Calix didn't know that his sister had so much free time for such absurd actions. Yuria added that she didn't have much free time left, since she had actually just awakened as a mage, and that meant that she would soon be receiving lessons from Sir Alex. The brother became interested in the conversation when he realized that the girl had become a student of the Master of the Magic Tower. Yuri wanted to continue the conversation in the same direction, continuing to delay time. Yuri thought that her brother would want to know everything, so she told him. The guy agreed with her, because if the future head of the family did not know what happened, he would have turned out to be a bad heir. Calix wondered how the girl could leave after being attacked at a picnic, receiving only an apology. He found it suspicious that the Master of the Magic Tower was there, because it was very difficult to establish contact with this person. Moreover, the young man found it completely illogical that the tower owner wanted to take someone from their family as an apprentice. Yuri just laughed and told him to tell the same thing as their father. Calix choked on his tea from such impudence, because he didn't expect that he would be treated like that. Yuri was amused, because she thought that both her brother and father were worried about her. After these words, the young man became furious and hit the back of the chair. The girl realized that she had crossed the line, then asked her brother to forget about it. Calix noticed that it was so easy to throw words around forever when asking to forget if she was wrong. The girl felt uncomfortable, but admitted that she really did have such a habit. She felt she was wrong in her judgment, because she and her father had said the same thing, but she decided to take her brother's word for it. Yuri didn't understand what she was talking about at all. She was completely out of her mind, watching the countdown. She was afraid that she would be kicked out of the office ahead of time, but suddenly her brother calmed down and told her not to worry about it. However, he admitted that he did not want to hear this story anymore, so he asked the girl to leave. By this time, the event had already ended, and the heroine had received the reward. Although her brother's favor had increased, Yuri didn't understand why he still seemed so distant. That's why she never liked him in the game. So the girl decided to leave, since she had already ruined his mood. As she headed towards the exit, Yuri kept telling herself to keep a businesslike smile and not to get upset. After the girl left, the brother was irritated for some time and tried to calm down. A little later, Yuri noticed that the line in her brother's thoughts had changed a little, and now he was thinking about how he didn't want to hear about a certain person. The girl still made him feel hostile, but if his thoughts had changed, then their relationship had changed a little, which could be considered progress. Yuri was very surprised when the maid came running, looking for her mistress. She reminded that today, the girl should take part in trying on dresses with Madame and Lady and Elena. Yuri was surprised, because she really didn't know that such an event was on her schedule. But she was interested in what fashion was in this world, so she was happy to get involved in dressing up. The maid advised the girl to hurry, because Madame and Elena had already searched for her. Yuri was surprised that the maid allowed such a tone in her communication with the lady, but decided to turn a blind eye to it this time. Accompanied by the maid, the girl went to her stepmother and free sister, who were already waiting for her. The first thing Yuri did, as a latecomer according to etiquette, was to greet them. Mother introduced the fashion designer Chris, with whom it took a lot of effort to negotiate, so they were worried that the girl would not come. At some point, Elena insisted that she would not choose outfits without her sister, because she truly respects her. Yuri knew that from a human perspective, even an apology could be perceived as weakness, so asking for forgiveness was very difficult. Instead, she thanked her sister for her kindness, which got her out of the situation. An event suddenly began in which the sisters compared their elegance points. However, immediately after this, Yuri learned that her elegance stat was still locked. The girl was shocked that she had lost before she had even had time to do anything. She figured something was inevitable since she was at the very beginning of the game. However, what struck Yuri most was that immediately after this, a penalty event was received. As a penalty, Yuri had to receive an apology from Elena for the rude behavior of the maid, otherwise her level of elegance would drop. The girl was disappointed, because this game only made her life more difficult. The first thing Yuri did was turn to the maid and ask her to introduce herself. It was Rose, Helena's personal servant, and the daughter of Viscount Melton, who was the pawn of the girl's stepmother. Yuri added that she asked her to introduce herself because he noticed how diligently the girl carried out her duties. And when she hurried her with rude words in the corridor, she was completely stunned. At that moment, Rose realized that she was in trouble. Elena was surprised by this behavior of her personal servant. Mother had heard that Elena was treating this girl well, so she decided to pretend that she hadn't heard anything since she was clearly nervous about the delay. She asked Yuri to treat this with understanding, and this was exactly the answer the girl was expecting from her stepmother. However, it was interesting to see how sweet Elena would handle this situation. The sister apologized to the girl and asked her to forget the rudeness of her maid, after which the penalty event was successfully completed. Yuri agreed to forgive the maid, and she herself was glad that she almost lost all her glasses and elegance before she even opened them. Rose also realized her mistake and bowed low to the lady, apologizing to her once again. After this, Mother suggested forgetting about this situation so as not to keep Mr. Chris waiting. The man was very proud, as one would expect from the most talented tailor in the empire. The first thing he decided to do was to demonstrate the new samples from their studio. Elena changed into an incredibly beautiful and delicate yellow dress with flower buds. The stepmother and Yuri were delighted because this outfit really suited the girl. The heroine looked around and realized that the entire wardrobe was selected in colors that best suited Elena. The sister herself noticed that if she simply changed the color of the dress, it would suit her sister too. She immediately contacted a tailor, asking him to make a dress of a similar design, but in a different color palette. The stepmother remarked that then she would have a reason to say that the girls looked like loving sisters. Yuri was a little puzzled, because she remembered an episode of the game in which there was a dress similar to Elena's. At the time, she didn't know the backstory, but now everything fell into place, so she wasn't going to take part in this show. The girl said that this dress suits Elena, and she looks wonderful in it. However, after looking closely at all the outfits, Yuri added that she did not see a design suitable for her here. Chris decided that the girl thought that his model did not correspond to her high, refined taste. He didn't want his mother to justify the girl, because if she thought that her dress didn't suit her, then he wouldn't sell it to her. Yuri hoped that this would not influence the tailor's judgment, and that he would do a great job with her sister's dress. Chris only became more convinced of his judgment and promised to give his all for Elena. After this, the stepmother asked the man to leave so that she could talk alone with Elena. The woman admitted that she couldn't find a better daughter, and she gave her all the qualities she needs to become better. Now the mother did everything to support her daughter, but today, Yuri began to dig her own grave. Having lost her dress from Chris, she was laughed at in high society. The stepmother noticed that this was Elena's chance, which she could take advantage of and surpass her sister. She admitted that she could not bear to see the happiness of that very woman's daughter. Therefore, the stepmother hoped that the girl would cope with the responsibilities assigned to her. Elena was not thrilled with the idea, but she still promised that her mother would have nothing to worry about. The woman hugged her beloved daughter, hoping that her plan would succeed, and Elena herself did not know what to do and how best to act in this situation. Alex sent a note and said that Yuri should be ready for her first lesson the next day in the afternoon. The girl was happy that her first lesson with the Tower Master was finally about to begin. 2 minutes before the start of the lesson, Yuri was sitting in the classroom and was afraid that the master might be late. She hoped that the guy was not going to break their agreement so that her mother could not gloat about it. Suddenly, a young man simply appeared in the room not far from Yuri. He decided that the girl was not thrilled about the upcoming lesson. The heroine had not yet recovered from the shock and asked how the young man appeared in the room. However, Alex only chuckled and noted that she shouldn't ask about it. Instead, he invited the girl to look around her and look around the room. Yuri saw a huge number of different magical artifacts that stood around the entire perimeter of the room. She realized that she had just been transported to a magical tower and reminded him that kidnapping a lady could lead to trouble. Alex realized that this could cause misunderstanding, but he did nothing wrong. The Tower of Mages is ideal for training, as it is located in the place of a strong magical flow, which is why it transported the girl. Yuri noted that he should have mentioned this in his letter the day before. Even if the guy didn't make a mistake, he'd better agree with her arguments. Transferring a noblewoman without any warning could lead to trouble, because the guy set up a teleportation point in the Duke's house. Alex became embarrassed, blushed, and decided that the girl was worried about him. Yuri was surprised by his words and did not understand how the guy came to such a conclusion. She couldn't understand why his favor continued to grow. She added that if something happened between Alex and her family, it could interfere with their activities. They agreed that the next time the young man would officially come to the estate before being transferred somewhere. After they had discussed all these points, it could be considered that the very first lesson with the Master of the Magic Tower had begun. The The first thing the girl needed to do was create her own mana circle and study it. Yuri tried to do this several times, but each time she failed. By the end of the lesson, despite the concentration, the result was not achieved, and mana and intelligence increased only slightly. Alex reassured the girl, reminding her that it was rare for anyone to be able to create their own mana circle on the very first day. However, he was a rare case, because nothing less is expected from someone who became a master of a magic tower at 25. However, Alex continued to encourage the girl and repeated to her that there was no need to despair. In addition, the young man wanted to clarify one point regarding the girl's true name. Yuri immediately remembered the conversation with her father, where she promised never to reveal her true name to anyone. She didn't know what Alex wanted to tell her, so she was going to be vigilant. But unexpectedly, the master of the magic tower declared that from that moment on, the girl should not reveal her true name to anyone. She is from a well-known family, so if something happens, it will be difficult to hide it from the public. Although such cases were rare, sometimes they even led to death, so the girl should be careful. Yuri thought she was overreacting, but she still promised to keep the true name a secret. In the evening, she looked at the system notifications and realized that not every time the level of favor changed, the description of the relationship with the characters would change. At that moment, the maid knocked on the lady's door and said that the Duke had returned home and was calling his daughter into the office. Yuri came to the Duke, but the father and daughter continued to sit in silence for some time. There was awkwardness between them. The girl thought that her father called her to discuss something, but in the end he remained silent, so she decided to start the conversation first. Then she thought that her father was unhappy because she did not come out to greet him. The girl explained that she thought the Duke would want to rest, but he was not that tired. After that, all her ideas for conversation ran out, and Yuri did not understand why the man called her at all. Suddenly, the father started talking about the fact that his daughter had not had a new dress for a long time. Yuri decided that what happened to Sir Chris had reached her father's ears, and her stepmother could have presented everything in a negative light. She decided to answer neutrally just in case, noting that she already had enough of the outfits she had. Suddenly, the man became very serious and remarked that a lady of the Roseanne house should never doubt whether she needed new dresses. Yuri tensed up and didn't know what to do, because the situation became even more oppressive. The girl did not know what exactly caused such displeasure in her father. She remembered that she needed to increase his favor, among other things. Now she was afraid that everything would return to the beginning. The tense atmosphere became pleasant again when the Duke called the servants and asked them to bring them tea. Yuri immediately felt the aroma that appeared in the room with the arrival of the butler. Chamomile tea, which the Duke had personally selected on his return home, was placed before her. The girl's father was unhappy that the butler Philip had let it slip and revealed his secret. Yuri just smiled at this and noted that the tea had an incredibly enticing aroma. The palace leaned towards its master and whispered something in his ear, as if reminding him. After this, the Duke took a deep breath and admitted that their family's finances allowed them not to drive themselves into frugality. The butler also added that the head of the house tried to convey that they should buy everything they needed. Only now did the girl understand what exactly her father had been trying to tell her, but had been too shy. She smiled sweetly and thanked her father for his concern. She promised that she would be happy to order some new things for herself, as the Duke had said. The man just smiled and promised that the girl didn't have to worry about their cost at all. Yuri immediately felt relieved when the man's favor towards her increased. After this, the girl thanked her father for the tea and for the warm evening, and then retired to her room. The heroine was heading to the bedroom along the corridor when her stepmother called her. The woman heard from the servants that Alex was not in their house today. Yuri winced, but she had guessed that the woman would bring up this topic. The girl explained that today's lesson was canceled because the magician had urgent matters to attend to. However, she admitted that she was not at all upset about what happened. They had already managed to contact each other and agreed to hold classes the next day. The mother admitted that she was so sorry that the girl did not have the chance to order clothes from Sir Chris. She offered to arrange another meeting with the tailor if Yuri changed his mind. However, the girl was fine and thought it would be better if Chris focused on her sister's dress. Mother believed that if a girl did not wear clothes made by him, then high society might start looking down on her. However, Yuri only smiled in response and assured that there was nothing to worry about. The mother accepted the girl's refusal, but did not understand where she got such confidence from after what had happened. After this, Yuri thanked the woman for her concern and went to her room. The woman was unhappy with what happened, because she assumed that the girl might have had a different tailor. Yuri knew that Chris's dresses had been dominating the social scene for a long time, but it was time for a change. In the original story, after a social event, the prince is supposed to discover and introduce her to a new designer. However, the girl decided that she needed to find this man on her own first. Yuri was about to get into the carriage and go to the city when her brother suddenly appeared and scared her. The girl immediately guessed that the young man was practicing his weapon skills nearby. She explained that she wanted to go into town for a short while on business. Initially, she thought that her brother came because he needed something from her, but he only remained silent in response. After this, Yuri calmly said goodbye to him and climbed into the carriage. She considered that riding in a carriage in such a dress was a great ordeal. Opening her eyes and looking at her brother, Yuri saw that he was looking at her with surprise and holding out his hand. There was an awkward silence between the brother and sister over the situation that had happened. Calic suddenly blushed deeply, removed his hand and became embarrassed. He asked the girl for forgiveness, after which he quickly turned away and walked away. Yuri never understood what happened to him and what caused this strange reaction. The first thing the girl did was go into town and see a huge crowd of people gathered at Chris's boutique. It was immediately obvious that this place was the most popular studio in the entire area. However, the place the girl was looking for had to be nearby. Yuri walked up to Rosetta's nondescript boutique and knocked on the door, but no one opened the door. Yuri even thought that it was closed, since there were no signs that there was anyone inside. But soon a noise was heard, and someone from inside shouted loudly, asking to wait a little. A few moments later, the door opened, and a pretty girl looked out. Yuri asked to go inside, explaining that she was driving past and noticed a dress in this boutique. Having looked around, the girl immediately found what she was looking for. This was the same dress that the main character of the game wore at the ball with the prince. It was so beautiful that it was called the Spirit of Summer, but now it was different. Yuri honestly noted that the quality of the fabric is terrible, so it does not allow the dress to open up even half as much as it could. The girl understood that hardly anyone came to this place, because Chris's boutique was located nearby. Under such conditions, this was the little that Rosetta could afford. Yuri wanted to support the girl and tell her that she really liked the design, but they were distracted by the noise outside. Rosetta apologized for the incident and went to the exit to sort it out. Chris's assistant stood at the threshold and swore at the girl because she couldn't answer him. Rosetta got angry at the man and reminded him not to come to her boutique anymore. The assistant was tired because she kept refusing his offer, so he had no choice. He noticed that her boutique was a disgrace to the street, and the girl had the audacity to stand right in front of his boutique. But Rosetta didn't feel guilty about owning her business and building, so she refused to sell it and kicked the designer out. The man did not believe that the girl could have a visitor in such a terrible place. Then, Yuri decided to attract attention to herself and cheerfully waved her hand at them. The girl introduced herself formally because everyone around was clearly interested in who she was. Everyone was amazed when they heard her words and saw the rose-shaped coat of arms on the knights' uniforms. The fashion designer immediately rushed to apologize to the girl for causing her trouble. With just one word, Yuri easily made the man leave. From this incident, Rosetta learned who was in front of her, so she shook with fear. Yuri admitted that she came because she liked the dresses in this store. However, after hearing this man's rude words, an idea came to her mind. She offered the owner to sell her half of her business. Madame Rosetta's reputation will grow as Yuri's personal tailor. Thanks to her masterful persuasion, the girl received the title of novice negotiator, thanks to which her intelligence, eloquence, and charm also increased. Rosetta couldn't believe that someone like Yuri would invest in her small boutique, because the thought of acquiring half of the business had never even occurred to her. The aristocrat asked to trust her, because the girl's designs were brilliant and amazing. Now it was necessary to begin the renovation of the boutique, because in order to cope with the future influx of customers, it was necessary to change the furnishings of the premises. Rosetta was scared, because renovations usually cost a lot of money. However, Yuri asked her not to worry, because she could provide a debt obligation on behalf of her family. Rosetta thanked for the trust shown and promised to do everything to live up to expectations. Yuri asked not to take everything so seriously and to entrust the renovation to the Isis Trading Company. This is a trading company that was secretly created by the prince, so it is the perfect opportunity to avoid Chris's tricks. Yuri believed that she needed to use the information available to her advantage. Sometime later, while getting ready, the girl told the maids that she was going to visit the salon of the Marquise of Ciantic. They were delighted, because this family owned the most famous salon. Even the invitation exuded elegance. It was said that many writers and actors gathered in the Marquise's salon, and that charity concerts and plays were also held there. In addition, the Dowager Marchioness, a former lady-in-waiting of the ruling family, often appears there. She is also the godmother of the prince, who was to become the future ruler. The maids were disappointed, because if the girl had said this earlier, they would have tried to make her even more beautiful. Soon the preparations were finished, and Yuri looked amazing, befitting the place she was heading to. The maids praised the image of their mistress and hoped that the girl would attract a lot of attention. Elena saw her sister in a luxurious outfit in the corridor and asked where she was going. Yuri admitted that she was heading to one place, which surprised the blonde. Elena accidentally let it slip that she and her mother knew that the girl had not been invited anywhere. Yuri noted that she had received the invitation directly, since she could no longer depend on her mother for invitations. Elena was a little disappointed with what was happening, but still tried to find out where her sister was heading. The girl was unpleasantly surprised when she heard that Yuri was going to the salon of the Marquise Ciantic. Elena smiled resolutely and wished her sister a good time. Yuri promised to tell her how everything went after returning, so she asked to tell her mother not to wait for her and to go to bed right away. Elena promised that she would fulfill this request, after which she said goodbye to the girl. However, her look and facial expression did not bode well. Yuri went to this prestigious and famous place with one specific purpose. She knew that there would be an important episode in the game where she would discover her second talent. Just by visiting the Marquise's salon, the girl's reputation grew significantly. As expected, the famous salons were not just on everyone's lips. Just visiting them helped to advance. Yuri had just arrived at the event when the hostess of the evening approached her. She immediately bowed to the woman and realized that even a mask could not hide the identities of the guests. Yuri enjoyed the company of noble ladies and, through small talk, increased her reputation and made connections. After some time, the Marquise noticed that the girl's company was worthy of the main guest. She explained that this only meant that Yuri was the most anticipated person at the evening. The Marchioness noticed that there was another main guest who had not shown up, although no one expected him to miss the event. Suddenly, the woman smiled and asked her to find this guest. She explained that she had planned to introduce them to each other that evening anyway. Therefore, the Marchioness suggested playing a game of hide-and-seek. They agreed that if Yuri goes to the hero in 3 songs, then she wins. Otherwise, the victory goes to the Marquise. The system immediately showed a small quest, but Yuri still couldn't figure out exactly which person she needed to find in 30 minutes. After thinking for a bit, the girl realized that it could only be one person, even though his name was not mentioned. She accepted this quest and challenge from the Marquise, promising to find the secret guest. The girls agreed that as soon as Yuri found the guest, she would convey to him the words of the Marquise that the guy should not be idle. The system suggested that when approaching the secret guest, a sound signal would be heard. Yuri believed that with such a system, it would not be difficult to find him, so she began to look around. The girl decided that if she took a walk, the likelihood of running into him would increase. After some time, Yuri got tired, because she looked everywhere, but still did not find the man. And suddenly, she heard a signal when she passed by a half-open room. Yuri took a flashlight from nearby and entered the dark room, following the sound of the signal. Suddenly, a couple who were planning to have some privacy burst into the room. The girl was worried that someone might catch them, but the guy reassured her. Yuri didn't want to disturb the young people and interrupt them, so she hid around the corner. She didn't know what to do, because she hid without thinking about how to leave later. Suddenly, the young man whispered in the girl's ear that he could help her get out of this situation. Yuri looked back, and the system immediately reported that she had found the right person, after which a secret meeting with the crown prince began. Meanwhile, the sweet couple listened to extraneous sounds, fearing that there was someone in the room. Yuri realized they heard her when she accidentally screamed in fright. The prince decided to have some fun and suggested that the girl chase the couple away. He coughed loudly, after which the lovers apologized to the other people and quickly ran away. Yuri just laughed at the absurdity of the situation. She explained that she was in this place because she was looking for someone. Then the girl assumed a funny pose and reminded that the lady had advised the young man not to be idle. The prince immediately realized that she was looking for him, and the girl herself was drawn into a small bet. Yuri extended her hand to the young man to introduce herself and formally introduced herself. In response to this, the young man kissed the tips of her fingers and introduced himself to her. At this point, their meeting was completed, and the system accepted the crown prince's discovery, and the girl's talents of charm and speech were revealed. After the end of the third episode, Yuri finally revealed her true name and unlocked all of her skills. Unfortunately, that day after their first meeting, the young people were both very busy. The prince was to be next to the lady, while Yuri herself accompanied the marquise. Plus, her reputation grew from visiting the salon, so it was worth all the effort. At dinner, Mother announced that she had good news for the family. Elena received an invitation to a closed ball in honor of the spring holiday, to which only close people are invited. Although Elena has only just made her debut, she has already received an invitation from His Majesty. Yuri assumed that her stepmother would want to know her reaction to this event. She noticed that Elena was able to attract attention, but she herself did not receive such an invitation. In fact, unlike the salons, an invitation to a ball could be obtained thanks to one's last name, and Elena has more than enough reason to be on the list of those invited to the ball. Yuri understood perfectly well that she could not be defeated with such attacks alone. After this, at the table, Mother and Father discussed the need to prepare as best as possible for this event. Suddenly, the stepmother reminded that Yuri had awakened magical abilities, so the woman offered to give her the magic ball. It was the very same ball that was given to the founder of their family by His Majesty himself. Once upon a time, His Majesty gave the first head of the dragon clan a treasure that increases magical power. Just take it in your hands. The first head of the dragon seal learned to use sacred power in his magic. After this, the magical line of dragons was tragically cut short. However, now that their Yuri had gained magical abilities, Mother believed that she had earned the honor of becoming the rightful owner of the sphere. The girl listened carefully to her words, but something made her wary. If you didn't know her stepmother better, you might think she was on her side. However, the Duke stated that it was not for them to decide who was worthy of owning this ball. According to the records, the ball is a treasure, the claimants of which must pass a test, and over the years, not a single magician has succeeded in doing so. Mother insisted that Yuri had the blood of the first descendant, so she should inherit the family treasure by right of descent. There were rumors that only those with the blood of the ancients could break the seal. This could be right. Yuri figured out her mother's plan, who hoped that the girl would try to take possession of the ball and that she would fail. In the end, the stepmother humiliates the girl completely, but Yuri was not so simple. The heroine thanked the woman for her concern, but admitted that she didn't think she needed anything so grandiose at the moment. Yuri just wanted to live to her solo ending without any problems. She wanted to see what her mother would do if she refused. However, the girl was surprised when she saw a notification from the system that her level of persuasion skills was insufficient to conduct this dialogue. The stepmother asked the Duke if there was a chance that Yuri would not fail the test, especially since she was trained by the Tower Master. The woman reminded that as a student of the Tower Master, her talent must be unique, and she believed that perhaps the girl could even return her family to its former glory. The next day, Calix came to his sister and reminded her that the ball was an artifact that no one had managed to get hold of in the entire history of their family. Yuri wasn't that worried, but she noticed that the young man looked pale. The guy was irritated that instead of listening to his advice, the girl was doing some nonsense. He said that the council meets only once every 2 years, and even the emperor listens to the decisions made there. So if they try to remove the seal of the ball there and fail, the whole empire will know about it. Only now did Yuri smile and realize that Calix had come to her because he was worried about his sister. At first, the young man was embarrassed, but then he put on a calm expression and noted that she was still his family. After this confession, the 4th episode began. Thanks to Calix's influence, the hidden skill of grace was unlocked. The girl decided that she was doing quite well, since she managed to win over her brother, who demanded even more diligent work on the relationship. However, his attitude was still strange, because instead of supporting, the young man only egged on his sister. Calix admitted that you can tell what the girl is thinking just by looking at her face, because she is the eldest daughter of this family. Calix was the heir, so naturally he was worried about what was happening to the girl. He asked her to immediately talk to her father and tell him that trying to break the seal on the ball would lead to unforeseen consequences, and therefore the decision needed to be reconsidered. He reminded that the seal must be broken without prying eyes, in the presence of only family members. Although Mom had not foreseen this recently, Yuri understood that Calix did not want to believe in his stepmother's evil intentions, but he still came, caring for his sister. In response to Yuri's words, she only smiled and admitted that Calix was the true heir of this family. The young man was very confused by her sudden words and warm smile. Then the girl added that, as a true heir, the young man shows concern and takes responsibility for the rest of the family members. These words reached Calix's heart. He was pleased to hear praise. The young man was embarrassed and wanted to know if the girl really thought so. Only now did Yuri realize that all this time, Calix liked being praised. However, she stated that she would still risk breaking the seal on the ball. The stepmother had thought it through well before starting this conversation, so she couldn't just ignore her. Yuri was still worried, because if she couldn't remove the seal from the ball, people might doubt the Tower Master's decision to take her as an apprentice. And in the worst case, the Duke's family may abandon the girl altogether, but she already had a plan that would help remove the seal, because she knew who to ask for help. Sometime later, Alex arrived at the Duke's house on an official visit. Yuri was glad to see him, because she was looking forward to the next lesson. But before leaving, the young man had to greet the parents of the girl he had secretly kidnapped last time. As if by the way, Yuri asked if she could ask the young man for a favor. She decided to interest him with her request and suggested calling it an exchange. Yuri wanted the Tower Master to place a seal of protection on her palm. Alex was very surprised by this request, because the girl, in principle, should not yet know such things and such serious magic. Midway through the game, Yuri is ordered to remove the seal from an ancient jewel. However, only someone from the Rozan clan can remove the seal, so Alex places a protective seal on the girl's palm to help her deal with it. The magician was surprised that the girl even knew about this seal. From the game, Yuri knew that this was a magic key that could remove even the most powerful seal in the world. She knew this because of a moment in the game, but she wasn't going to tell the rest. Alex was surprised that the girl had read the magician's works and that their views were very similar. However, the young man could not help but ask why the girl would need a seal at all. Then she said that she had to destroy the seal on the family heirloom. She is a wizard who appeared 200 years after the end of the wizard line of her family, and everyone has high hopes for her. Alex didn't believe it, but he was captivated by the fact that the girl had become familiar with the magician's original works. Yuri offered that, in exchange for the seal, she would call him teacher and show him every respect. In fact, if the girl succeeded, she planned to take the right to the relic from her father. Then she could hand it over to Alex to examine. The young man was interested in various magical items, so he thought this idea was a good one. Yuri was pleased that she managed to persuade Alex to help her quite quickly. The waiter was serving a new guest and offered her dessert with her tea. Yuri, who had changed her appearance, asked instead to do something similar to the sunset seen from the 5th coral island of Malta. The waiter immediately realized that this was a special password for guests who decided to contact his boss. He informed the head of the Malta Information Guild, Rachel, about the arrival of a guest, so the girl was given an audience. Although everything around looked like a pastry shop, in reality, it was the headquarters of the main information guild in the empire. Rachel was the kind of person who gave you extra reputation points if you had tea with her, so Yuri came to the girl and told her that she wanted to attend a secret auction that was taking place in the underworld during the festival. She promised to pay double the fee, but in that case, no one should ask unnecessary questions. Rachel immediately understood her client's request and was happy to fulfill it. To cast a seal of protection, several ingredients are required. While Yuri can get mana stones and other materials, dragon blood is the hardest to obtain. This material, in the original game, could only be obtained through the Emperor. However, the heroine could have gotten it in another way by going to the Spring Festival, a romantic-themed festival event where you can get some pretty exotic goods at the night market. And in the dungeon, a secret auction was held right during the holiday. This time, the main lot was dragon's blood, which the girl now acquired. Yuri took the necessary ingredient and then ran while being pursued. The girl was disappointed that her transformation ring did not work. She managed to purchase dragon blood at auction, but she still had to make the return journey. If she is tracked down, she will have to use a teleportation scroll. Yuri ran forward, but wandered into a dead end, and the bandits were about to attack her and take her blood. The girl quickly unrolled the teleportation scroll and was about to use it. Suddenly, a young man appeared out of nowhere and stood up to defend her. The bandits immediately realized that a holy knight was standing in front of them, so they began to run in different directions. By this time, the rest of the knights had approached them, but the captain ordered the bandits to be left behind, as they had more important matters to attend to. The young man turned to the girl they were about to attack and inquired about her condition. However, he was very surprised when he realized that Yuri herself was standing in front of him. The system reported that, thanks to Cedric's influence, the hidden talent spiritual power had manifested, and now the girl had revealed all of her talents. She was now a versatile player, and all of her stats increased, after which the 5th episode of the game began. After Yuri got used to this world, she began to have thoughts that this was not a game at all, but a completely different world. She thought that all the heroes were ordinary people, because half of what happened here, the situation, the meetings, the threats, all of this was not in the original work. Likewise, in the original story, there was no Cedric who just helped her. Yuri had to pretend that she was lost in the crowd at the night market, and therefore found herself at a dead end. She came to the market with an escort, but she was mistaken for someone else in the dark and began to be followed. The girl sincerely thanked the young man for saving her. He was only glad, because Yuri did not look scared at all after what happened. Cedric apologized for the interrogation and offered to take the girl home. Yuri was afraid that she would disturb the young man because he was on duty. Cedric's favor increased, and he declared that protecting the important person was also his duty. Yuri decided to take the chance and ask the young man for a favor. She liked the fact that his favor towards her had grown, although she did not understand the reason for this. The next day, after returning from the night market, a family council was held. Yuri and Alex collected all the ingredients, and she received the seal of protection. Everything was perfect. As soon as the girls appeared at the event, the system immediately organized a competition between the sisters in terms of their level of attractiveness. Yuri's charm level was not strong enough, so Elena won the competition with ease. Because of this, a penalty task appeared, in order to complete which Yuri had to enter the hall before Elena. The girl knew that she had more important things to do, so she wanted to finish this as quickly as possible. She simply stated that according to her status, she should be the first to enter the hall and walked around her sister. Since Yuri managed to enter the Great Hall before his sister, the penalty task was completed, and the characteristics were increased. Entering the room, the girl saw a spacious, bright room, in the center of which stood a pedestal with a ball. The men whispered among themselves, and the Duke noticed that his daughter had appeared at the meeting. Her dress was strikingly similar to his late wife's dress, so the man couldn't shake the image of going back in time. Yuri looked around and realized that all attention was focused on her. The council began to discuss whether they should really remove the seal from the ball, since they did not know exactly what would happen if they did so. Other people were not going to challenge the Duke's decisions, because if the girl wanted to pass the test and everything was ready, then there was no point in interfering with her. For some time, the aristocrats continued to argue among themselves, not knowing what they should do. Then, Yuri apologized to those present and reminded them that she had already decided to remove the seal from the ball, so she would simply carry out the Duke's decision. The father reminded that if something goes wrong, the girl can stop at any moment. In her world, Yuri imagined that the ball looked more fragile, but it was stronger than she could have imagined, so she felt that there was a huge power hidden inside. The girl took the ball in her hands, and everyone around held their breath. For a while, nothing happened, so people started whispering that Yuri wouldn't succeed. The girl heard all the doubts about her abilities and was just waiting for the right moment. She used the protection seal Alex gave her, causing the orb to glow brightly. Out of nowhere, a strong wind arose. The princess rose into the air and was surrounded by light and magical signs. Even before the event, Alex told her the rather simple conditions for activating the protective seal. She needed to activate her mana chain and put it into the seal on her hand. But the girl didn't know how to do this yet. Alex understood that, but if she really wanted to use the seal, this was the only way. Yuri realized that she had to succeed this time and trained all the time. The girl knew that this was nothing compared to what awaited her in the future. This was just a small obstacle. Yuri concentrated and sensed the right moment, used her mana, and destroyed the protective seal. As soon as the seal was broken, the wind immediately died down, and a halo of bright light appeared around the girl. The ball also changed its appearance and became lighter, and thousands of stars began to shine inside. Everyone was amazed by the girl's achievement. Her reputation instantly increased, and she was also given the title of Liberator of the Ball. Yuri carefully placed the ball back in place, then bowed to the Duke. She reported that the seal on the family treasure had been officially removed. The girl asked the man for a favor after everything that happened. As the representative of the clan that had removed the seal from the magic ball, she asked for permission to own the ball. After the event ended, Yuri went to Alex, who wanted to know what happened. She smugly told him how everything had gone perfectly and according to plan. It was decided that she would own the family jewel until her death. The girl also mentioned that all this is thanks to Sir Alex, her teacher, so from now on, he can do research as much as he wants. Thanks to the game, the girl knew that the ball had truly magnificent characteristics, but Alex did not have this information. The fact that her favor had only increased because he was told that research could be done made the guy actually seem odd. Alex knew Yuri could handle it, but as her teacher, he couldn't help but say it was a great job. The girl did not expect praise from the young man at all, so she was very surprised. Even the system reported that the tower keeper praised the girl. Yuri didn't know how strong the praise had to be for even the game to register it. The girl realized that the young man was truly happy that he would have the chance to explore the magic ball. After fulfilling their agreement, Yuri was about to leave so that Alex could fully concentrate on his research. The young man was delighted that the girl was so attentive. This literally sent his favor skyrocketing, which worried Yuri a little. Thanks to the system, the girl knew that Alex considered their relationship between student and teacher to be simply wonderful, and she thought it was incredibly generous of the tower keeper. Before the girl had time to reach her room, she ran into her brother, who did not know where she was. Despite the festival season, the girl had been staying out too late lately. However, Yuri denied everything and reminded that she had just returned from training with the tower guardian. However, Calix looked serious and noticed that he was not only talking about today. The boy knew that recently, on the opening day of the festival, his sister returned home only after the fireworks had ended. Then he accidentally saw Marquis Cedric escorting the girl to her home. Yuri tried to explain that she got lost in the night market that very day, and it was an accident. However, Calix seized on her words and did not understand what the lady of their family was doing in the night market with commoners. Yuri didn't know what to tell her, because if she said that she liked it, her rating could drop significantly. So the girl just grinned and tried to avoid answering. Eventually, the brother relented and reminded him that there was a limit to how much he could turn a blind eye to this. Yuri, at first I didn't understand what he was talking about, but then everything fell into place. From Calix's words, she learned that it was he who silenced the knights who were looking for the missing princess. The girl sincerely thanked her brother for his help, even though he shouldn't have done it. Calix asked the girl to be careful so that he would not have to deal with such useless questions. At this point, their conversation ended, and the young man went up the stairs and went to his office. Yuri didn't know how to react to this, because sometimes she couldn't understand the guy at all. Before the girl had time to come to her senses, the butler was already running towards her with the news. The man was in such a hurry because she had received an invitation from the imperial palace. Yuri realized that the news that she had broken the seal on the black ball had already reached the emperor's ears. The increase in reputation during the event already exceeded the requirements for entering the palace, so she was expecting an invitation. However, Yuri gave the invitation back and noted that it would be better to send it to her stepmother as planned. The girl understood everything perfectly well, but had to observe some limits of decency. As much as she wanted to, she couldn't help but deliver the royal invitation. The butler apologized to the lady and promised to ensure that this invitation was delivered to the mistress of the house. Yuri knew that her stepmother was very proud that Elena was able to get an invitation to the imperial ball. Now she had to find out that the heroine had also received an invitation, which was sent almost directly from the emperor. The girl was interested in how her mother would react to this. She was in anticipation. The next day, Yuri's maids were delighted when they saw the golden invitation. Yuri didn't understand why her mother sent someone instead of bringing such good news in person. The stepmother's personal maid explained that the lady was unwell today and was unable to receive guests, so the invitation was entrusted to be delivered to her. Yuri immediately became concerned about her mother's condition and suggested visiting her. The maid still asked to refrain from visiting, since her mistress needed to come to her senses a little. Then, Yuri asked to tell her mother a speedy recovery, because it would be sad if she did not recover when the time came to attend the imperial ball. The maid understood that the mistress would not like all these words, but she still promised to pass it on, after which she left. Yuri was looking forward to the ball, an invitation to which she had received from the imperial family itself. Soon the girl went to the main office of the Isis Trading Company. There she was immediately met by the administrator and asked why the guest had come to see them. Yuri pulled on her cloak so that she wouldn't be easily recognized, and then asked to meet the head of the company. She showed off the rose emblem, which allowed her to quickly enter. The first thing the administrator did was lead the girl to a magical vertical transportation system that was created to make it easier to move between floors. She added that they installed it about a month ago and are now actively using it. Yuri was interested to see the magic elevator and understand how it differs from the usual one. The administrator was amazed by the girl's behavior because most of the guests were afraid to come here, but she didn't care at all. The girl admitted that even she herself is sometimes afraid to be in a confined space, as if it is suffocating her. Yuri realized that in this world, an elevator seemed like something supernatural to people, but it would be a great business. As soon as the girl entered the office of the head of the company, the young man immediately rose from his seat and greeted her. He thanked the guest for her visit and asked what business she had with him. However, Yuri only smiled and stated that she didn't want to meet him. She stated that the young man standing in front of her was not the owner of the trading company. The man did not understand what the guest was talking about because his name was Sam and he was the official owner. Yuri threw off her cloak and introduced herself, noting that she had not come here to waste her time. She announced that the man she was looking for was the true owner of the company, a young double-headed eagle with golden feathers. The girl hoped that the fake guy would understand who she was talking about. After all, there can only be one person in the entire empire who is a young double-headed eagle with golden feathers. Crown Prince Adrian just walked through the door and did not understand how the girl managed to reveal his secret. The trading company was secretly established by the Crown Prince, who had a commercial streak, and thanks to his skills and knowledge, the company was able to achieve great success. The girl understood the guy's suspicions because she found out about everything before the emperor. She knew most of the information about the hero from the game, but the golden invitation was also signed with the name of the Crown Prince. So Yuri decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. Since she came uninvited, she decided to tell her secret as an apology and admitted that she had bought the information from the best information guild in Malta. The prince had not yet had time to meet them, but he was interested in what had made the girl go so far. Yuri didn't do this on purpose, because she just wanted to make sure that this company was reliable before entrusting them with the construction of the studio. She explained that she was investing in Rosetta's boutique and had encountered some unpleasant circumstances during construction, so she decided to thoroughly research the trading company. She didn't care how Chris would sabotage the construction. She believed that the prince would definitely be able to complete his work perfectly. The young man listened carefully to the girl and understood what was being discussed. He couldn't decide whether to be surprised or happy, but he knew that the girl had made the right choice. However, he noted that it was rather reckless to come all this way to meet him. Yuri felt a threat coming from the guy, so she realized that she couldn't delay any longer. She admitted that she came here not only with this problem, she had another request. The girl extended her hand to the young man and asked if the crown prince would be her partner at the royal ball in honor of the holiday. Yuri added that she plans to wear a dress from Rosetta's boutique to this ball, which will be simply stunning. Then, the young man sheepishly remarked that she shouldn't have come in person for this reason either. He was confused by Yuri's request to help her with the construction and promotion of the studio. The girl just laughed and admitted that she was a simple lady who wanted her business to prosper. And in return, she promised never to tell anyone that it was the crown prince who owned this trading company. After this, Adrian laughed and admitted that the girl was much smarter and more dangerous than he could have imagined. Yuri didn't understand why his favor had suddenly increased so much. The prince was ready to make this deal and reminded her that the girl's loyalty and life were at stake. Yuri was not afraid of an unsuccessful outcome because she knew something that could help her in the future. 2 days had passed since she had successfully made a deal with the crown prince, and the long-awaited ball was to take place in the evening. The royal ball will be held in the summer imperial palace, around which there is an incredibly large garden. Yuri knew this was the perfect place to show off her gorgeous dress. The stepmother and Elna were already waiting for the girl downstairs so that they could all go to the event together. Yuri came down accompanied by her maids and saw that her mother and sister had not yet left. The aristocrats noticed that Yuri's dress was magnificent, so they asked where she got it. The girl happily said that Miss Rosetta had sewn this dress for her. The stepmother noted that they had already been too late, so they should hurry up and hit the road. However, they did not expect at all that Yuri would announce at the last moment that he would be delayed. The stepmother hoped that the girl would not say that she did not plan to go to the royal ball at all. Then Yuri calmed the woman down and admitted that the whole thing was that someone was supposed to come and pick her up. Before the stepmother had time to find out who would be accompanying her, the butler entered and announced the arrival of a guest. He conveyed the words of the crown prince that the carriage had been brought and was waiting outside. Yuri confirmed the butler's words and admitted that Crown Prince Adrian was accompanying her today. The stepmother did not understand how this happened, because the girl never talked about anything like that. Then Yuri admitted that she was going to report it, but her mother was uneasy and she missed the opportunity. Then Elena noticed that her sister could have told at least her about this. She was sorry that she heard this good news so late and was unable to congratulate Yuri. However, the girl noticed that this was just an escort, so she said goodbye and went first. When the heroine was about to leave, her sister suddenly noticed that she had already seen A Midsummer Night's Dream. Although this phrase was harmless, the expression on the girl's face indicated that she had her own plan for this event. Already in the carriage, the prince asked what Yuri was thinking about, because he felt lonely when his partner was so distracted. The young man admitted that he is simply very childish and wants to attract the attention of his partner. Now that the girl was talking to him, his irritation was greatly reduced. Yuri thought that out of the 4 main male characters, Adrian was the kindest. However, now she thought that there was another side to him, different from the one he showed to others. The girl looked out the window, and it seemed to her that they were not heading towards the capital. She assumed that the young man was going to silence her forever. She embarrassed the prince, but still noted that it was too early to say that they had a trusting relationship. Adrian just laughed and admitted that he had deliberately made the carriage make a circle through the outskirts in order to change the time of arrival at the ball. He remembered that the girl wanted to show her dress to all the people who came to the event. He winked and suggested thinking of it as a special service for guests and clients of an international trading company. Yuri joked back and remarked that she admired the prince's commercial talent. Meanwhile, Mother and Elena had already arrived at their destination, but they were not happy about it. Out of anger, the stepmother squeezed her fan so hard that she could have hurt her hand. The woman was sure that Yuri was playing with both of them and even lied to them. Elena asked if her mother really had that opinion about her older sister, since Yuri hadn't done anything bad up until now. A few days ago, by leaving her behind at a council meeting, the sister was simply taking advantage of her eldest daughter's privileges. After these words, Mother calmed down and decided to hurry up and enjoy the evening, since they had already arrived. They tidied themselves up and headed towards the main hall, which sparkled brightly in the darkness. Mother made sure to always smile. Even when this girl, Yuri, was holding the crown prince's hand, she needed to modestly express her gratitude in response to the envious compliments from other people, because they really thought she cared about this girl. As soon as the stepmother and Elena entered the hall, they were announced to all the other guests. The aristocrats immediately greeted those who entered, because the Rozan family was respected in society. Everyone bowed their heads before them and were eager to communicate closer, to get a little bit of their attention. The stepmother knew that she and Elena had their own influence. They just needed to re-enter the social circle. However, the woman's mood suddenly deteriorated when she realized that Yuri was still not at the ball. The next second, it was announced that Lady Yuri and Crown Prince Adrian had arrived at the event. Everyone knew that Mrs. Yuri was known for her modesty at events, and the Crown Prince only accompanied members of his family. In addition, everyone noticed the magnificent dress, which clearly was not from some popular salon. However, despite all this, people agreed that the couple looked great together. The stepmother was furious about what happened, because Yuri still showed up to the ball. Emperor Harry noticed that Hadrian was a little late, but attributed it to the fact that the boy was holding the hand of such a beautiful girl. The man patted his son in greeting and was glad that the young man had finally shown up. Yuri immediately bowed to the emperor, but he noted that there was no need for such formalities. He heard that the girl had removed the seal from the treasure, and she was also the first mage to blossom so much in 200 years, and she could bring happiness to the entire empire. At that moment, their stepmother Letizia approached them and was very glad to see the emperor in good health. Yuri hoped that everything was fine with them because the emperor looked pleased with the meeting. However, the girl realized that the man had forgotten her younger sister's name because he called her by a different name. The next thing the emperor did was to acknowledge the woman's efforts as a mother and thank her for her guidance and care. Lady Yuri has grown noticeably and accomplished a feat by breaking the seal on the magic ball. The mother only smiled and admitted that she was flattered by the emperor's praise regarding her child. After the official greeting was over, the emperor announced the beginning of the ball. Yuri and Adrian were tasked with leading the first dance at the royal ball, causing all of the girls' data in the system to increase. The young man admitted that he understands why spending time with Yuri becomes more and more enjoyable with every second. He had thought about it for a long time, but whoever her tailor was, his skills were excellent. Yuri thanked the young man for such a compliment and admitted that, thanks to the prince's help, the dress's advertisement was an incredible success. The guys laughed and discussed how cleverly they managed to advertise the dress without any ulterior motives. After some time, Yuri went out onto the balcony to rest because she didn't expect that she would have to dance with the emperor as well. Her reputation grew, as did her communication skills, and Rosetta's boutique was successfully advertised. The girl was going to rest a little before the prince started looking for her, but she flinched when someone approached her from behind. The young man said that the beauty with silver eyes and dragon blood was shining against the moonlight. Yuri was scared because she realized that the final boss was standing right in front of her. The final boss of this game was Archduke Lowen. This incredibly charming hero appeared in the second part of the game and was a dangerous character, killing the main character in most endings. Yuri was scared and didn't understand why they met so early, since she was still in the early chapters of the game. The young man leaned closer to the girl, took a deep breath, and noticed that his suspicions were true. Only then did Yuri remember that he had said something about the blood of dragons, which she had already used. The girl tried to pretend that she didn't understand what the young man was talking about, but the system immediately gave her a warning and informed her that she did not have enough ability points for this. Lowen just chuckled and noted that no one taught the eldest daughter of the Rozan family. He stated that if a girl is lying, it is immediately obvious. The young man pointed to the girl's throat and noticed that her fear was giving her away. Then he lifted Yuri's hand and gently kissed her fingers, as is proper etiquette when meeting someone. Then the young man smiled charmingly and declared that the scent of dragon's blood was floating around her. Yuri was afraid that if she made a mistake, she would die in this place. She admitted that she had indeed taken the dragon's blood, but she no longer had it. The girl realized that lying was not a solution, but even being near the guy was unbearable for her. So she confessed that she used the dragon's blood to destroy the seal on the family heirloom. Immediately after this, the system reported that a hidden quest had been launched, to complete which the girl had to deliver the dragon's blood to the Duke. Yuri didn't expect this, and she was also shocked that the favor notification system was turned off. The girl did not understand why the system suddenly changed, as if she had been expecting this moment. Yuri was scared by what was happening, so she didn't know how to communicate with the Duke. The girl was saved by Adrian, who saw Lowen and approached them. The Duke immediately let go of the girl's hand and greeted the crown prince. Adrian wondered what his dear brother was doing with his partner in this secluded place. However, Lowen had no intention of revealing his plans, so he stated that they had done nothing, looking meaningfully at the girl. Yuri supported his story and admitted that they simply met and introduced themselves to each other. Adrian noticed that it was time for Yuri to go back, as today had been a very tiring day. The girl took advantage of this opportunity, officially said goodbye to the young men, and declined. Finally, Lowen remarked that you would look forward to their next meeting. Already in the evening, Yuri tried to see Lowen's favor, but his data was hidden. She didn't understand why the final boss's name even appeared in the relationship window. The girl couldn't imagine that Lowen would need dragon blood, but she couldn't return what she had already used. However, Yuri was not going to give up. She needed information. So the girl went to the guild to see Rachel for information about the Duke. However, the head of the guild immediately noted that obtaining this information would be very difficult. This work will take some time and will be quite expensive. In addition, Yuri wanted to try her luck and asked if it was possible to obtain dragon blood. The guild leader knew that there had recently been an auction at the night market for this ingredient, and she offered to find out more about the buyer. However, Yuri knew that it was herself, so she suggested considering other possibilities. The head of the guild was pleased that the client had given her such a good job, which was both interesting and well paid. In the evening, having bought sweets, Yuri returned home and felt exhausted. At such a moment, she did not feel like an aristocrat at all, at best, like a nobleman's servant. She just wanted to go for a walk and eat something sweet to cheer herself up. But being a lady isn't that easy. The girl understood that without security, she could not even walk down the street calmly. Suddenly, someone called her by her real name, which was impossible since Yuri had used a disguise ring and changed her appearance. She couldn't understand how anyone was able to recognize her in her altered form. Turning around, the girl realized that Marquis Cedric was addressing her. The young man admitted that he recognized the girl by her gait and posture, just like last time at the festival. The Marquise was annoyed that, even though the festival was over, the girl still continued to walk around without protection. Yuri realized that she had problems, because last time they agreed that this situation would not happen again. Yuri didn't know what to do, because she couldn't just admit that she had slipped away from the guards because she wanted to send a secret request to the guild. And Cedric could not understand what kind of important reason could justify the fact that a lady from a noble family was walking alone without protection. The young people would have continued arguing, but they noticed that a carriage with horses was rushing towards them. It was only thanks to Cedric's quick reaction that they managed to avoid trouble and jump aside. The young man promised that he would definitely find and stop this coachman who was driving so fast in the city center. However, he noticed that the girl was wounded and did not want anyone to know that she was from a noble house. She reminded him that the ring for changing his appearance was not that cheap, and she did not want to waste it. The girl insisted that she only had a scratch on her shoulder, and it wasn't worth such attention. Cedric noticed that the girl didn't look surprised at all. In fact, Yuri wasn't worried about the wound, but about what they would say to her if she returned home looking like this. The girl was most worried now about her ruined clothes. Then Cedric offered to take the girl to his mansion. Yuri didn't understand what was going on, because the young man was usually not very friendly. She noticed that her intelligence had increased after she dodged the carriage, so she assumed it was somehow related. She decided that this situation occurred after reaching certain requirements for increasing intelligence, so she also increased the hero's favor. She had failed to gain favor points the first time they met because she missed the dance, so now she wanted to take this chance and spend time with the hero. Therefore, Yuri happily agreed to the young man's application. At his home, Cedric introduced the girl as Lady Yuri's servant. The girl introduced herself as Rosalind and explained that she had been running an errand for her mistress when she accidentally injured herself. The butler suggested that the girl follow him so that they could get to the doctor and treat her wounds. The doctor noted that the wound did not need stitching. Everything went quite smoothly. Unexpectedly, Cedric demanded that the man use a potion to heal the cut. The doctor tried to explain that using a potion was not at all necessary for such a scratch. However, from the look in his master's eyes, he realized that this was not a request, but a demand without the right to refuse. Then, the doctor rummaged in his bag and took out the necessary bottle, the liquid from which he poured onto the girl's wound. The next second, the wound completely disappeared, and Yuri understood why the potions were so expensive. The doctor noted that the balm could heal the wound, but not the shock of receiving it, so he advised the girl not to get into stressful situations in the near future. In fact, the man did not understand what kind of relationship his master had with this girl, that he was spending such an expensive product on her. After finishing the treatment, Cedric asked the doctor to leave the room and leave him alone with the girl. The first thing Yuri did was thank the young man for his help both in the city and with the treatment. Cedric admitted that he had absolutely no desire to secretly help the girl. Yuri noticed that he had drawn a very clear line and made it clear that this would not happen again. She couldn't promise that something like this wouldn't happen again, but she did promise to follow Cedric's advice and be more careful in the future. The girl admitted that this was the best and most honest thing she could promise. As a token of gratitude, the girl opened her bag and admitted that she had brought an apple pie. Although the box was a little dented when she dodged the cart, the pie itself was not damaged. Yuri offered to share this wonderful pie with her as a token of gratitude. She admitted that she bought it from her favorite dessert shop, so she was sure of its delicious taste. The girl spoke so seriously about the pie that Cedric couldn't help but laugh, and the atmosphere between them became friendly. In the evening, when there was no trace left of the scratch, and she had changed her things at Rosetta's boutique, Yuri returned home. The girl hoped that she would be able to enter before anyone noticed her, but she was unable to hide from Calix, who was waiting for his sister. Yuri tried to justify herself and say that she just went to the boutique. Calix noticed that the girl had been leaving the house a lot lately and that her behavior was suspicious. Yuri was afraid that she was acting too strangely or that someone was following her. However, Calix, embarrassed, assumed that the girl was secretly dating someone. Yuri had never expected this option, so she didn't know how to react. She tried to convince the guy that everything was wrong and that he had misunderstood. Ever since she started learning magic, she had barely had time to do her homework, let alone anything else. Although it wasn't right away, Calix decided to believe his sister. Lately, the girl often bumped into her brother when she returned home, so she assumed that he was waiting for her. Calix immediately blushed and tried to say that she had imagined it all. The guy acted like a cat caught doing something naughty. Calix was so irritated and embarrassed that he simply chose to walk away from the conversation. Yuri decided to tease him a little more and finally thanked him for coming to meet her. The girl was pleased that the young man cared about her so much, even though he did it in a peculiar way. The Spring Festival is one of the main events of the social season, hosted by the imperial family. Instead of animals or monsters, the prey is young men and women. Participants are divided into hunters and prey by drawing lots. The prey wears a ribbon, which is the hunter's target, and the basic rule was to give up the ribbon if you were caught. This year, the sisters and brother of the Rozan family took part in the hunt. Yuri was excited about the event, but reminded everyone that it was just a little fun. Calix hoped that Yuri would not give up his position and would not give his tape to someone just like that. Elena suggested giving the ribbon to the crown prince, because the prey could do that. Yuri was surprised that no one believed that she could become a hunter. In fact, the girl didn't care whether she became the prey or the hunter. If she is a hunter, she will not accept the ribbon, and if she becomes the prey, she will not give hers to anyone. She knew that this was the only way to achieve the ending she was looking for. However, Yuri believed that as a hunter, it would be easier for her to pass this test, but she was out of luck. The particular problem was that she became an unusual prey. The Spring Festival is more like a matchmaking event for men and women who want to get married, and it is very easy to become a winner. A person only needs to receive a special ribbon, which will then play out the winning place. The winner gets the right to ask the emperor to fulfill any wish. But now the girl's chances of protecting the special ribbon were even lower. Yuri was thinking about her chances of winning and didn't notice when Bianca pointed at a young man in front of her. Yuri looked where the girl was pointing and saw Lowen. She was shocked and didn't understand why the final boss was at the festival, as it was completely different from the original plot. All the girls around were discussing his appearance, because Lowen was famous for rarely appearing in public, but suddenly decided to attend the social season. The young man walked and looked around, as if looking for someone. Yuri was startled when she realized that Lowen's gaze had landed on her. The young man smiled and then greeted the girl by name, drawing the crowd's attention to her. The girl ran through the forest with all her might and tried to hide. Because of Lowen's appearance, her plan to hide and sit quietly until the end of the competition went down the drain. She didn't understand why he appeared, because she still didn't have dragon blood. The girl was afraid that the guy would definitely do what he promised to do in the summer palace. Luckily, Yuri had taken a few things in case something went wrong. She took out a mana stone that can hide her presence by turning her into an object in the environment. The girl placed the stone to her chest and concentrated to activate it. Initially, the stone began to glow green, but then went out and did not turn on again. She thought she had been sold a fake, but the system reported that the stone's activation had been suspended due to external factors. Yuri didn't understand what this meant, but concentrating on the stone, she didn't notice anything around her. Suddenly, the system began reporting that the flow of surrounding mana had been interrupted, and the danger level in that area had increased. Yuri looked back and saw that a rift had appeared right behind her. The system reported that an unknown creature of incredible size was discovered in the rift. Before the girl could do anything, a huge monster had already broken through the rift into this world. Yuri heard that even the roar of a monster had enormous power. She fell to the ground due to an unbearable headache. The girl was practically unable to move or do anything when the monster rushed to attack her. Yuri only thought that she had tried very hard to survive in this world, and now she would die just like that. The girl had almost said goodbye to life when a bright explosion illuminated the entire clearing. Someone incredibly strong repelled the attack of a huge monster with one blow. A moment later, the monster, having lost its mouth, fell to the ground dead. Lowen admitted that the girl dealt with the appearance of the monster even better than he expected, because she did not faint. Yuri didn't know what she was more afraid of, the monster that had just almost killed her, or the appearance of the final boss. The girl was amazed at his strength, because he had just crushed a huge monster with one blow. Lowen extended his hand to the girl and remarked that since she could speak, she was okay. He grabbed her tighter and pulled her up, forcing her to her feet. The young man pulled so hard that the heroine lost her balance and bumped into his chest. The girl immediately moved away from the young man so that he would not misunderstand her. The rift near the boys gradually began to close until it completely disappeared. Yuri didn't understand how the rift could open so suddenly, frighten her, and then close just as suddenly. The girl came to her senses and thanked the young man for helping her and saving her life. Lowen noted that he did it without expecting gratitude, so everything was fine. Yuri thought the guy came for the dragon's blood, because he admitted that she hadn't received it yet. However, the final boss knew this, because the girl used it to break the seal on the ball. Yuri didn't understand what he wanted from her, since he was convinced that this was true. However, she didn't expect Lowen to admit that he would like to get to know her better. Yuri couldn't believe that the guy wanted to get to know her better. She knew from the game that he was the same person who would commit betrayal 2 years later and then take her life, but she couldn't say it directly. Lowen laughed and remarked that he was genuinely interested in the girl. The young man added that on the day of the competition, he expressed his interest by receiving the ribbon from her head. However, Yuri was extremely reluctant to give her ribbon to anyone. Lowen didn't understand why the girl refused so stubbornly. Then Yuri admitted that she would like to give the ribbon to another person. The final boss easily realized that the girl was lying, because her eloquence skill was not enough to deceive him. He noted that if Yuri wanted to deceive him, she needed to improve her skills in doing so. The guy reminded that he was the hunter and the girl was the prey, and they had to follow the rules of the game they had joined. Yuri really didn't want to give him her ribbon, so she offered him a deal and promised to find a way to get the dragon's blood. Lowen was surprised by her proposal, so he thought about it for a moment. Before making a decision, he wanted a detailed explanation of her plan. Then, Yuri showed him the piece of paper with the crown that she had received during the draw. She was surprised that Lowen himself agreed to play the game, but did not understand what it meant. The girl explained that if she could protect the ribbon until the end of the hunt, she could win. And the winner can make a wish to the emperor, and then the girl can ask his majesty for dragon blood. Lowen was not against it, but Yuri refused to say what benefit she got from it. The young man was interested, so he accepted her offer. After that, the quest to find the dragon's blood advanced by 20% at once. Yuri received the title of mid-level negotiator, and her stats increased. The guys remembered about the monster and decided that they should send it to the magicians so that they could deal with it. Yuri agreed that Alex would be delighted with a new subject for his research, so she asked Lowen to give her the monster so she could give it to a mage she knew. The final boss was surprised by her desire, but allowed the girl to do as she saw fit. Yuri had no intention of investigating the monster herself, but she couldn't pass up this chance to improve her relationship with the tower's owner. After the boys decided what to do with the monster, they moved deeper into the forest. Lowen remarked that the girl had better go with him, since she would not be able to guarantee the safety of her tape. She was unable to resist experienced hunters, so the guy promised to protect her until the end of the game. In reality, he just wanted to take the chance to get to know each other better. The system reported that Lowen became the heroine's temporary escort, causing her reputation to increase. The boys were walking through the forest, and Yuri was afraid that this test would not go smoothly for her. Lowen didn't understand why the girl was walking in circles, as if she was looking for something. Then Yuri admitted that she was looking for a stream to wash away the blood and not scare anyone upon returning. The guy was surprised that she hadn't mentioned it before. He knew for sure that the stream was in the opposite direction. Yuri was amazed at his skills, because in this place there was not even a sound of water. However, Lowen decided to take advantage of her tactics and only joked, saying that it was a secret. He noticed that it was not only the lady who had her secrets, he also needed to keep at least one. After some time, as the final boss said, they came to a crystal-clear stream. The monster's blood made Yuri stink and feel disgusted, so she wanted to wash it off as quickly as possible. The girl hurried to the stream, but slipped and fell into the water. Lowen immediately ran to her, afraid that something might have happened to her. Yuri warned that she was going to take off her shoes, so she suggested that the young man turn away if he did not want to look. Literally, a few moments later, Crown Prince Adrian and Marquis Cedric appeared on the other side of the stream, and the event of the meeting at the source began. The system reported that if no one quarreled until the end of the hunt, the girl would receive the power of a peacekeeper and increase her characteristics. Yuri convinced the guys that she was okay, but she herself thought that the event of friendship began with such a strange situation. The prince was glad to hear that the girl was fine, but he did not understand how she had ended up in such a situation. Lowen greeted the boys and explained that they had met by chance. The prince and Marquis Cedric carefully crossed the stream over the stones to the other side. Judging by what the girl saw, neither one of them had a ribbon, which meant they were both hunters. The girl didn't know what to do now and how to protect her prize feed. Yuri wanted to introduce Lowen to the guys, but they admitted that they already knew each other. The prince hoped that he would be able to hear the full story of Yuri's adventures later, but for now he suggested returning to the palace. However, the girl stopped him and admitted that she couldn't do this yet. She had the ribbon, so if she came back, someone would definitely try to take it, and she didn't want to part with it. Even if she stays like this and catches a cold, it will all be the result of her stubbornness. Cedric just sighed tiredly and suggested making a fire so that the girl could warm up and dry off. After some time, the guys made a fire and sat around it so that everyone would be comfortable. The girl was glad that they had managed to calmly enter the friendship event. Now it remained to make sure that these three would not fight. The prince was still trying to persuade her to return, but Lowen was against putting pressure on the girl. He wanted the girl to be left alone because she was already old enough. Adrian noticed that Lowen simply had no idea what it meant to care about someone. Yuri was irritated because these two were the most problematic opponents. The girl drew attention to herself and noticed that if the guys continued to quarrel because of her stubbornness, she would become uncomfortable. She also added that if the boys continued to quarrel, she and the Marquise would have to leave them alone in the forest and go away. The prince and the final boss put their argument aside, although they still looked at each other with disapproval. The girl decided to change the subject and asked the hunters if they had already received their ribbons. From their hesitation and confused look, Yuri immediately understood what had really happened. She guessed that these two were running away from all the girls who offered them ribbons. The boys felt uncomfortable admitting that they were running away from girls, so they preferred not to say it directly. The boys spent several hours around the fire, chatting about everything under the sun, arguing on various topics, and enjoying each other's company. After some time, the organizers set off fireworks on the main square. An explosion high in the sky informed the participants that the hunting festival was over, and everyone needed to return to the castle. Thus, the system event was successfully completed, and Yuri received her title of Guardian of the World. The girl felt awkward when she returned to the palace, and Lowen did not leave her side for a single step. Before Yuri had time to enter the main hall, Calyx had already rushed towards the girl. She saw her brother's worried face and was worried that something had happened. However, the guy was irritated and asked what was going on and why she was accompanied by 3 unmarried young men. The girl had no choice but to explain that she had accidentally stumbled upon them all in the forest. The brother looked at each of the boys with irritation, but especially focused on Cedric, who had already walked the girl home late at night more than once. Calyx walked decisively towards the young people, and Yuri was afraid that he would do something to them. In fact, the girl shouldn't have worried, because the young man just wanted to greet them and thank them for escorting his sister safe and sound. After this, Yuri breathed a sigh of relief when she realized that there would be no conflict. The prince declared that he had acted like a gentleman, so the young duke did not need to thank him. Calyx did not insist, but simply turned to his sister and asked her to leave. This made Adrian laugh, realizing that the young man had that side too. The prince reminded the girl that she should hurry up since she had become the winner of this tournament. After this, Yuri said goodbye to her companions and headed towards the emperor. She mentally hoped that she would be able to keep her word and bring the dragon's blood to the final boss. The emperor congratulated the girl on her victory, and, as the winner of the annual hunting festival, gave her the right to make any wish. Yuri bowed her head to the ruler and asked him for dragon blood as a reward. She explained that she had recently awakened as a mage, and like most mages, desired to obtain rare, valuable magical items. The emperor thought for a moment, then smiled and ordered that the girl's dragon blood be brought to her. Yuri sincerely thanked the man for fulfilling her wish. She looked at the crowd that had gathered in the palace, but what interested her most was the final boss, who was lurking at the exit. The girl hoped that Lowen was happy that she had managed to obtain the ingredient he needed. However, after obtaining the dragon's blood, the system reported that the hidden quest's progress had only reached 40%. It seemed logical to the girl that everyone in the banquet hall called her funny, since it was unlikely that another noblewoman would have dared to ask the emperor for dragon blood. Calix admitted that the girl made a good choice, because making a wish to His Majesty the Emperor is a public event. If the wish is too ordinary, it may be seen as disrespectful to the emperor. However, if it is too unusual, then this is also a bad sign. This meant that Yuri had handled the situation well. The girl was glad that her brother praised her, even if he did it in such a peculiar way. Suddenly, a young man approached her and asked her to take his hand. He escorted his sister into the main hall and invited her to dance. Yuri admitted that she didn't expect an invitation from him because they usually never danced. Since the girl was the winner, Calix, as her brother, decided that the only right thing to do was to ask her to dance. Yuri admitted that it was very sweet of him, which embarrassed the young man. After the dance, the system reported an increase in the girl's characteristics, and the young man admitted that he enjoyed spending time with his sister like this. Yuri realized that if even Calix was saying such things, it meant that she had truly achieved success. Unexpectedly, Elena joined them, wanting her brother to dance with her now. Calix accepted her offer, but looked sternly at Yuri, hoping that she would not cause trouble during his absence. The girl waved cheerfully to her brother and sister, who headed to the ballroom. She wanted to go out onto the balcony and rest a little, but she was so distracted that she didn't notice how a stranger bumped into her. The man stepped on her dress and tore it, and people around him immediately noticed it. They noticed that the outfit of the winner of the hunt was hopelessly ruined. The stranger apologized for the fact that due to his carelessness, the girl's dress was torn. His companion immediately began to scold the young man and demanded that he take the girl to the ladies' room. Yuri watched them and couldn't understand what exactly, but something in their conversation confused her. Soon the stranger, with the most charming smile on his face, approached her and offered to walk her home, while the girl behind him hid her smile behind a fan. Only after this did the heroine realize that the young men were flirting in front of her. She wanted to refuse his accompaniment, but the Baron insisted that he could not leave the girl alone in such a situation. Yuri didn't understand why everyone was so upset, because her dress was only slightly torn. At such moments, all she could do was act decisively, so the girl wanted to persistently refuse the escort. However, she didn't have time to do this, because Lowen noticed their squabble and came over to find out what was going on. The young man reminded Yuri that she had promised to give him the next dance. In fact, they had no agreement, but from the faces of the conspirators, the girl understood that the final boss was saving her. She decided to play along and noticed that something had happened to her dress. The Baron, who was the cause of this incident, was afraid that the Grand Duke would now take out his anger on him. Yuri decided not to clarify the details, but simply to go to the ladies' room. Lowen remarked that since their dance was being postponed, he simply had to accompany the girl. Yuri understood that if she accepted his help, the Baron would not have a chance, and besides, she still needed to give blood to the final boss. The girl quickly realized that she had no choice, so she agreed to accompany Lowen. The Grand Duke waited for the girl outside and almost fell asleep while she took a long time to change her clothes. Yuri hoped that she wouldn't have to wait any longer for the guy, because she wanted to give him the dragon's blood as quickly as possible. The girl offered the final boss to take a walk, and he was only glad about it. The heroine dreamed that Lowen would finally stop saying things that made her blush, especially with such a face. The girl looked around to make sure there was no one nearby, and then went out onto the balcony. Finding herself alone, she decided to fulfill her promise and pulled out the bottle from its hiding place. The girl explained that it was dragon's blood, as they had agreed. Once Lowen took the blood, the hidden quest was immediately completed successfully, and the girl received her reward and increased the Duke's favor. Thanks to the influence of the final boss, the hidden seal was unlocked. The heroine learned that she now had access to the ability of awakening and the power of purification, but she did not know what it was. Lowen praised the girl for how well she had handled the delivery of the dragon's blood. The heroine was still frightened by the unknown messages, but she tried to keep a straight face and be glad that her life was now out of danger. From her reaction, Lowen assumed that she was not comfortable with his company. He admitted that he tries to get closer to her every time they meet, but every time she sees him, she acts scared and tries to run away. Yuri tried to deny everything, but because the guy could easily see through her lies, she couldn't do anything. The girl didn't know how long this would last, but she promised that she would try to deceive him until the very end. Lowen reminded that, in exchange for the dragon's blood, he did not touch the girl's ribbon with a finger. However, this did not mean that he promised to never appear near her again. The young man just smiled and remarked that the girl should remember this. A few days later, the butler happily announced that the Grand Duke of Lowen had delivered a gift to his lady. Yuri was surprised and did not understand what this giant box was in her house. After finishing the quest, she could see the final boss's attitude towards her, but she didn't expect him to send her the monster's head home. All the servants were frightened by this gift and did not understand why the Grand Duke sent the girl such a terrible gift. Yuri was pleased that the guy sent her away clean and in perfect condition. While the girl thought that thanks to the Grand Duke's care, she had less work, the servants were horrified that she liked such a gift. Alex, who soon arrived at Yuri's house, did not understand how he managed to get involved with such a madman. The heroine reminded that the keeper was studying the rifts, and she had heard that the monster's corpse was excellent material for research. Alex agreed, but he didn't understand why the Grand Duke had sent the head to help him with his research after he had killed the monster in front of the girl. Yuri admitted that she immediately thought that the monster would be a great gift for her teacher. Alex was embarrassed by such attention, but still considered the Grand Duke a madman. Yuri understood the teacher's feelings perfectly, but noted that an adult should not be shy about saying words of gratitude. Alex just took a deep breath and asked to tell him more about the incident with the rift during the hunting festival. Yuri explained that, for now, there was an official ban on this matter. The appearance of a rift and monsters directly in the courtyard of the royal palace is a serious incident. If the public finds out about what happened, the reputation of the royal family will be destroyed. The girl asked to remember this when Alex would listen to her story, which was still under a ban. She thought that everything would be fine as long as the teacher kept it quiet, so as not to get her into trouble. The girl hoped that Alex would not do this and would keep their conversation a secret. Besides, she noticed that there was no point in keeping the ban since she had already given him the monster's head. The heroine smiled and admitted that she saw something strange that day. She admitted that when she looked at the monster in the rift, it was trying to break into their world. It was then that the girl realized that cracks could appear like this. From her words, Alex understood that the monster itself had torn the space from the other side. Suddenly, the young man became very serious and reminded her that the girl had almost been killed while hunting. He was irritated that his own student almost died helplessly from the monster. Yuri tried to explain that this was because her mana flows were still not developed. Alex refused to accept such an excuse, even though she was still a young mage. The young man jumped up from the sofa and went to the table, starting to rummage through his papers. After some time, he returned to the girl and placed several stacks of textbooks on the table in front of her. Alex Grosno announced that they will begin intensive training starting today. The young man did not lie, and indeed, they spent the next few hours only studying. Alex was unhappy that the girl felt the flows, but her mana accumulation rate was extremely low. He asked her to take this seriously and stop making excuses, because she wouldn't be able to stand there like a pillar waiting for death next time. After many hours of training, Yuri finally mastered the first flow of mana, but she was completely exhausted. The girl was in absolute pain, but at least she achieved some result. The heroine remembered that even in high school, she had never studied so hard, because at this rate, she would say goodbye to life faster than she would reach her lonely ending. Rosetta suggested returning to the discussion of the work where they had left off. The girls were recently discussing the decor of their new boutique, and Isis sent several designs for the interior. Yuri was pleased because the prince was doing his job well. The girl liked the third design option, because if they installed the elevator in the center, it would save them from running up and down the stairs. Rachel admitted that she wasn't sure they needed to install a magical vertical transporter in the boutique. It looked like a small prison cell with bars, and she wasn't sure she wanted to go in there of her own free will. The girl was also afraid that the elevator would suddenly fall from a great height, which made her feel uneasy. The magic elevator, or what was called the elevator in Korea, was a groundbreaking invention by the prince's trading company, but it was met with a cold reception in the market. The reason was that this thing was too new for the public to easily accept. Yuri remembered that last time, the administrator of the trading company admitted that she was also afraid to go into it. Rosetta noticed that it looked like a small prison cell with bars and did not inspire confidence. Yuri was sorry to hear this, because the crown prince, who had clearly invested a fortune in its development, must be upset now. Suddenly, the girl came up with a plan by which she could turn everything to her advantage. A few days later, when she had prepared all the documents, the girl went to the trading company. The prince met the guest, although he was upset that the girl did not warn him about the visit in advance. The young man asked what brought her to him this time. Yuri noted that they had settled their issues last time, and she had no intention of revealing the prince's secrets. Yuri admitted that this time she came on business, and might even be able to find a solution to his problem. As soon as the girl started talking about the magic elevator, the last prince immediately paid attention to her words. Yuri knew that this was a revolutionary invention, but that was precisely the problem, because people could not get used to it. Although the prince invested a lot of money into its development, the profit was modest, and the reason for this was that the device lacked promotion. Yuri admitted that she had a proposal that would help solve this problem, but only for 30% of the share in the business of producing magic lifts. Adrian noticed that this was too much money for a simple tip, so he offered her 10%. However, the girl stood her ground. She not only wanted to give him advice, but also to take an active part in it. She added that, for the project to be successful, public opinion regarding the lift must change radically. The girl noticed that now she is the center of attention of the whole society. If the prince wants to use her influence, he must offer her more favorable conditions. The young man gave in and agreed to give her 20% of the proceeds for her help. After Yuri was able to convince the prince, as a reward for her exceptional negotiation, her title was raised to the next level, and her stats were increased. The girl's next step was to go to the confectionery shop that served as a front for the Information Guild to get a report on the progress of her case. Dragon's blood was completely monopolized by the imperial family after they sealed the Demon King, causing it to be rarely found for sale, and currently, it was extremely difficult to obtain it without going through the imperial family. From the report, Yuri also learned that Lowen lost both his parents in early childhood and spent most of his time in the imperial palace, and that he also likes sweet food. The girl burned the report because she expected more useful information from the Information Guild. After that, she grabbed the pie box and decided to move on to the next task. The Duke was surprised when the girl suddenly showed up in his office without warning. Yuri heard that he missed lunch, so she decided to treat her father to an apple pie from her favorite bakery. She persuaded the man to try the pie, which was indeed incredibly delicious. The maids prepared tea and set the table by the window, from which one could look out onto the garden. As if casually during the conversation, Yuri confessed to her father that she wanted to organize her own ball. At that moment, the Duke remembered his wife, who also loved looking at flowers and throwing balls. Therefore, the man easily agreed to his daughter's request and promised to provide her with a large hall in the West Wing. He noted that Yuri could take his checkbook and use it as much as he wanted, and there was no need to report his expenses to him. The girl was impressed by his generosity, but the Duke added that this was a test of her abilities, so she needed to prepare well. He smiled and added that the Duke did not throw around empty words. Yuri was delighted with the result of this conversation and believed that her father was the best in the world. She admitted that she had been so busy with work lately that she had completely forgotten about it, but she was truly amazed by her father's kindness. From the man's expression, she realized that she had gone a little overboard with the flattery, because her old work habits had come out. Suddenly, the Duke looked his daughter in the eyes and reminded her that she was the eldest daughter of the Rosen family. Until he was alive, there was nothing in the world she couldn't afford. The man asked her not to forget this, which touched Yuri to the depths of her soul. She was truly grateful to him. From the words of her maid, the stepmother learned that Yuri asked her father for permission to organize the ball. She knew it was time, and as a mother, she had to take care of her first. But she failed. The maid tried to convince her mistress that she was perfect, but the stepmother felt guilty. She decided that this was why Yuri did not turn to her, but went straight to her father. She was also amazed that the girl got a hall that opens no more than 3 times a year, a place where Elena was unable to hold her debut ball. The stepmother was unhappy that this scoundrel was now going to hold her ball there. The woman managed to give birth to Calix and Elena and raise them to adulthood. so she felt that she now had to take control of the situation back into her own hands. The maid asked her to calm down, because the ball would have to take place anyway. She suggested thinking about how to spoil it, which enraged her stepmother. The woman could not stand this attitude and slapped her maid. The maid immediately apologized for what she said and promised that she would remember her place. The stepmother wanted Yuri to make every effort to organize the ball so that she would be at her best, because everyone knows that the higher you fly, the more painful it is to fall. The Duke attended the meeting and considered proposals for the establishment of an ammunition factory and other concerns of the lands. He turned his attention to Marquis Cedric, who was busy discussing the problem with his neighbor. He wondered why this Marquis, Crown Prince, and Grand Duke were with his daughter. The man believed that if Yuri were to get together with anyone, it would not be with the Crown Prince, because the Crown Princess had more responsibilities than privileges. Yuri is healthy now, but it is unknown when the disease that killed her mother will make itself known. So even if he does not have an honorary title, it is worth considering a candidate who will not cause many problems. The man believed that the Grand Duke of Loen was no better, perhaps even worse, than the imperial family. There remained your Marquis Cedric, whose coldness might have been considered a disadvantage, but he was delicate, not a troublemaker, and had an impeccable reputation. Therefore, the Duke decided that among the men in his daughter's circle, Cedric was the most suitable candidate. The Duke approached the young man and invited him to a family dinner, which greatly surprised the hero. Mother was delighted that Cedric had arrived, having risen to the rank of Aura Master at a young age, commanded the imperial troops, and had no shortage of either money or women. She believed that this young man was rightfully called the most worthy bachelor in the empire. She had no idea why this guy had been invited so suddenly, but she thought it was a great opportunity to introduce Elena to him. As soon as Cedric arrived, she immediately greeted him as the hostess of the house and thanked him for his attention. No one present knew what kind of relationship Yuri and Cedric had, and the girl herself was only thinking about the fact that since their last meeting on the street and at the festival, Cedric had changed. He had stopped looking like a tomboy. Mother did not notice the young men exchanging glances and only tried to show herself from a hospitable side. She added that the doors of their home are always open to such pleasant guests as Cedric. At this point, the Duke joined them and reminded them that it was time to head out to the banquet. Mother felt that she had to do everything possible to ensure that Elena made a good impression on the Marquise, so she wanted to ask Calix to accompany Yuri. However, the Duke intervened and noted that his brother did not need to change anything and he would accompany Elena as usual. The stepmother was surprised by this, but could not object to her husband in front of the guests. The Duke said that Elena was very shy, so this would be best for her. The children did not interfere with their parents' plans, so they simply agreed with the announced option. Then Cedric had no choice but to offer his accompaniment to Yuri, who accepted it with gratitude. The girl immediately noticed that her father's behavior was unnatural. She noticed that he had suddenly invited the Marquis home and had also deliberately paired them, which had caused Calix's indignation. While the girl did not understand what was happening, the stepmother was furious about the disruption of her plans, but she turned all her anger on Yuri, intending to arrange a fun life for her in the future.